It's 3:00 a.m. The house is completely silent. The world outside your window is dead asleep, but you are wide awake.
Oh, yeah. The absolute worst time to be awake.
Right. Your eyes just fly open in the dark, and without any warning at all, your heart is racing. It's pounding against your ribs so hard it feels like it wants to physically escape your chest.
And there's that heavy, suffocating weight sitting squarely on your lungs.
Exactly. You try to take a breath, but it feels like the air it just won't go all the way down. And then the floodgates open. The noise starts.
The avalanche.
Yeah, a completely overwhelming, deafening avalanche of intrusive what-ifs just crashes over you. Like, what if I lose everything? What if something terrible happens to my family and I can't stop it?
Or the really deep ones, like, what if I am completely fundamentally broken and I am going to be entirely alone for the rest of my life?
Yes, those exact thoughts. And you try to breathe through it. You try to use logic to reason with it, but you just feel completely paralyzed, pinned to the mattress by this sheer invisible terror.
The isolation of that specific moment is just profound. When you are lying there in the dark, the physical sensation of suffocating makes the mental chaos feel entirely inescapable.
You feel trapped in your own body.
You do. The world shrinks down to just you and the panic. You feel incredibly small, and the fear feels larger than life itself. It is a very specific type of torment that, it convinces you that the morning is never going to come.
That terrifying 3:00 a.m. reality is the entire focus of our deep dive today. We are taking a comprehensive transformational look at a highly specialized set of notes.
And these notes are fascinating because they don't tackle this the way modern psychology does.
No, not at all. They offer a very specific how-to methodology for handling that exact brand of overwhelming anxiety and those paralyzing intrusive thoughts. But what makes these sources so unique is their foundational text.
Right.
They operate entirely off a scriptural framework, specifically utilizing the King James Version of the Bible, the KJV.
And the reliance on the KJV in these notes is, it's a very deliberate choice by the authors.
Why is that? Why not a more modern translation?
Because the 1611 translation uses a highly specific, authoritative vocabulary. It doesn't use modern clinical terminology, It doesn't talk about neurochemistry or amygdala hijacking.
Right, it doesn't use the language of therapy.
Exactly. It uses a different lexicon entirely to describe what is happening in your mind, and therefore it prescribes a radically different set of tools for dealing with it.
So the mission for today's deep dive is to really explore that paradigm. We're going to look at how these sources move completely away from what they call weak human willpower.
Which is what we usually rely on, right?
Yeah, totally. We're looking at a framework that steps away from modern coping mechanisms or the idea that you just need to, manage your stress.
Manage your stress, take a deep breath, count to 10.
Right. Instead, the notes detail how to use the KJV text as an active, offensive spiritual weapon to overcome what the text identifies not as a disorder, but as the spirit of fear.
And the real test of any framework, especially one dealing with something as visceral as panic, is whether it actually holds up when the pressure is on.
Because theoretical concepts are completely useless at 3 a.m.
Absolutely. When your heart is pounding, you don't need a theory. You need something that interrupts the chaos right then and there. The sources we are looking at suggest that ancient scriptural truths, when applied actively, are designed for that exact moment of crisis.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you've ever felt like you were drowning in worry, this framework flips the script completely.
It really does. To understand how to fight this, the sources argue that we first have to fundamentally redefine the battlefield we are actually standing on.
Right, because if you misdiagnose the problem, you are going to apply the wrong treatment.
Precisely. The foundation of this entire approach rests on recognizing that this overwhelming anxiety is not merely a biological issue. According to the framework, it is not just a disorder of the flesh.
Okay, so what is it then?
The notes point directly to 2 Timothy 1.7 in the KJV, which states, and this is a core verse here, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind."
Let's look really closely at that phrasing, the spirit of fear. I mean, that changes the entire taxonomy of what anxiety actually is.
It changes everything. By defining fear as a spirit, the text is revealing a crucial premise. This terror is an external spiritual operation.
Wow.
It is not a core part of who you are. It is not your identity. If God didn't give it to you, then the framework posits that it is an outside force acting upon you.
So you are not generating the fear, you are receiving it.
Yes, You are the target, not the source.
Think about the massive weight that lifts off someone's shoulders when they hear that. I mean, when you are in the middle of a chronic anxiety spiral, the prevailing thought is always, I am an anxious person. This is just my personality. My brain is just defective.
Oh, for sure. You internalize the panic as your literal identity.
And the sources call that internalization the primary deception, don't they?
They do. Because if the enemy can convince you that the fear is just who you are, you will never actually fight it.
You'll just try to survive it.
Exactly. You'll just manage it. To understand how this spirit operates, the notes cross-reference 1 John 4:18 in the KJV, which states simply, "Fear hath torment."
Fear hath torment. That is the defining characteristic.
Its entire function, its operational goal is to torment the individual.
Torment is such a heavy, aggressive word. It implies active, malicious intent. It's not just a passive feeling of unease or butterflies in your stomach. It's an active infliction of suffering.
And if we look at the Greek word translated as torment there, it's kolossus.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It carries the strong connotation of punishment or penal infliction. It acts like a jailer.
A jailer, so it's trying to lock you up.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And how does this jailer operate? By manifesting those exact physical sensations we discussed at the beginning. The suffocating, the crushing weight on your chest, the hyperventilation.
Because it physically mimics a fatal medical emergency. I mean, your body legitimately believes it is dying in that moment.
It does. And the sources suggest that this physical mimicry serves a deeply psychological and spiritual purpose. It is specifically designed to make you feel like you are losing your mind.
It wants you to feel fundamentally crazy.
Right. Because if you believe your mind is broken, you forfeit your spiritual authority. You won't fight back if you think you're just broken.
So the framework is telling us that the chaos in your head, the screaming voices, the panic, none of that is your actual identity. It is a targeted external attempt by a spiritual enemy to steal your testimony and silence you.
It frames the anxiety entirely as spiritual warfare. The objective of the torment isn't just to make you uncomfortable for a few hours. The objective is to keep you locked in a state of internal paralysis so that you cannot step into the life or the calling you are meant to pursue.
I want to push back on this a little bit on behalf of the listener.
Sure, go for it.
If I am sitting there and my palms are visibly sweating, my vision is blurring, and my Apple Watch is telling me my heart rate is at 140 beats per minute, how is that not just biology? I mean, how can a text claim this is a spiritual issue when my body is reacting with verifiable, measurable, violent physiological symptoms?
That's the most common question.
That's so.
And the biological reaction is undeniably real. Your body is absolutely flooding your system with adrenaline and cortisol. The nervous system is misfiring.
So it is biological.
Well, the framework doesn't deny the biology. Rather, it addresses the catalyst. The physical response is the smoke, but the spiritual operation is the fire.
Ah, okay. Let's use an analogy to map this out for the listener. Imagine you have a massive structural fire inside your house.
Yeah.
The flames are very real. The heat is melting the paint off the walls, and the smoke is actively choking you.
Right, the danger is present and physical.
Exactly. Now imagine you treat that raging fire like it's just a broken thermostat. You walk up to the wall and say, oh, it's just getting a little warm in here. Let me adjust the dial.
Right, let me just turn on the AC.
Yeah. You can fiddle with the thermostat all you want, but your house is still going to burn to the ground.
That perfectly illustrates the danger of misdiagnosing the root cause. Fiddling with the thermostat is the equivalent of relying on mere human willpower or simple positive thinking to combat a spirit of fear.
It's just a profound mismatch of weaponry.
It really is. You are essentially bringing a screwdriver to a sword fight.
The sources are unequivocal on this point. The flesh is weak. If you rely on your own human willpower to fight off a spiritual entity, you will lose every single time.
Because human willpower operates on a battery.
Yeah.
It has a definite limit. You experience decision fatigue, you get tired, you get hungry, your blood sugar drops, you have a terrible day at work.
And the moment your physical or emotional willpower depletes, the fear rushes back in to fill the vacuum.
Exactly. The framework insists that we must address the root cause, the spiritual fire, rather than exhausting ourselves trying to fan away the biological smoke.
So, if we accept this paradigm shift, if we operate under the assumption that this is a spiritual battle and not just a biological glitch, we have to identify the specific tactics being used against us. We need to know what the enemy's ammunition actually looks like.
And the notes refer to this ammunition very specifically as fiery darts.
Fiery darts. This terminology comes directly from Ephesians 6.16 in the KJV, right?
Yes, it instructs the believer. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked.
Fiery darts! In historical context, that isn't just a metaphor for a sharp stick.
Not at all. In antiquity, a fiery dart, or a phalerica, was a highly specialized, terrifying weapon. It was a heavy javelin tipped with iron, wrapped in tow, dipped in pitch, and set ablaze before being thrown.
That sounds horrific.
It was. And the purpose of a fiery dart wasn't just to pierce armor. The primary goal was to create absolute panic. When it struck a wooden shield, it would burst into flames, terrifying the soldier and forcing them to drop their defenses.
Which leaves them completely vulnerable to the main attack.
Exactly. The fear causes you to drop your shield.
The notes draw a direct parallel between those ancient weapons and modern intrusive thoughts. They emphasize that these darts are not just random floating anxieties, they are highly targeted, invasive what-ifs.
This is the core warfare of the mind.
And the sources provide very specific examples of what these darts look like in a modern context. They are shockingly common.
Very common. Thoughts like, what if I lose my job and can't feed my family?
Or, what if my child gets a terminal illness?
What if I have committed an unforgivable sin and I'm not actually saved?
Or even just that heavy, nameless dread that settles in your gut, declaring, I feel like I'm going to completely fail.
Look at the taxonomy of those thoughts. They are precision strikes. They don't attack random things. They target your foundational security, your deepest loves, your eternal destiny, and your core sense of self-worth.
They're engineered to hit you precisely where you are most vulnerable to panic.
And the psychological payload of these darts is just devastating. Because their ultimate goal isn't just to make you fret about your bank account or your physical health.
What's the real goal?
The primary objective of the fiery dart, according to this spiritual framework, is to manufacture a sensation of total abandonment.
To completely isolate you.
Yes, the enemy seeks to create an incredibly loud, echoing isolation inside your own mind, specifically to convince you that God is far away, indifferent, or angry with you.
Because if the fear can convince you that you are fighting alone, you are defenseless.
You'll drop the shield on your own.
We really need to look at how insidious this camouflage is. Because these darts rarely announce themselves as attacks from the enemy. They don't come with a warning label that says, hey, I'm a demon attacking you.
No, they disguise themselves in the very convincing wardrobe of just being realistic.
Right. You hear the thought and you rationalize it. You say, I'm just planning for the future. I'm just looking at all the variables.
I need to anticipate the worst-case scenario so I can protect my family.
I'm just being a responsible adult. That is why they are so incredibly difficult to spot in the moment. You think you are engaging in prudent, necessary planning, but actually, you have taken a fiery dart straight to the chest.
The pitch is burning, the poison is spreading, and you are inviting it in under the guise of responsibility.
And that responsibility rapidly metastasizes into the torment we discussed earlier. What begins as a seemingly realistic concern spirals down into a paralyzing fear that locks you in your bed at 3 a.m.
Once you recognize that these thoughts, these loud, catastrophic what-ifs, are actually external attacks, the logical next step is to figure out the objective.
Right. If we don't want this chaos, what is the alternative? What state of mind are we actually trying to construct here?
The notes route us back to that foundational verse, 2 Timothy 1:7. God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind.
A sound mind.
The ultimate objective is a sound mind.
And the sources offer a major paradigm shift on how we actually define a sound mind. I think this is going to be incredibly relieving for the listener.
It is a vital distinction for anyone who battles chronic anxiety. A sound mind, according to this scriptural framework, is not defined as the complete and total absence of fear.
I want to pause and let that sit for a second. Having a sound mind does not mean you never experience fear.
It is not a state of Buddhist detachment. It is not a perfectly empty mind. And it is not a flawless Zen state where a negative thought never crosses your threshold.
That's such a relief, honestly.
Right. The Greek word used for sound mind in that text is sophronismos, which speaks to discipline, self-control, and actively safeguarding the mind. Based on this, the sources define a sound mind as a state where KJV truth is louder than the lies.
Louder than the lies. That changes the goalposts completely.
Consider the immense pressure that takes off the anxious soul. You do not have to perfectly empty your mind, which, let's be honest, is impossible anyway.
Totally impossible.
You don't have to beat yourself up because an intrusive thought arrived. You simply have to learn how to turn up the volume of the truth until it drowns out the noise of the fear.
It's an equalizer. Like you are standing at a soundboard in your brain and you are actively pushing the fader up on the truth while pulling the fader down on the panic.
Yes, that's exactly it. Furthermore, the text declares this sound mind is a spiritual gift that has already been provided. God hath given us.
Past tense.
Past tense. It is not something you have to earn through perfect behavior or manufacture through meditation. It is an inheritance. It stands in absolute direct contrast to the spirit of bondage.
But here's where it gets really interesting. If a sound mind is about making the truth louder, that implies that a sound mind is an active pursuit.
Very active.
It is not a passive feeling of peace that suddenly descends from the clouds while you are just sitting passively on your couch.
You cannot wait for peace to happen to you. You have to take authoritative action to turn the volume up.
And that leads us to the core transformational how-to of this deep dive. We know a sound mind requires making the truth louder, but how do we actually execute that when the noise in our head is absolutely deafening?
When that 3 a.m. panic is screaming at you, how do you practically reach out and turn up the truth?
Exactly. The sources lay out a comprehensive step-by-step spiritual warfare exercise for this. They refer to it as the name and shield protocol.
It is specifically designed as a counteroffensive against the spirit of fear in the exact moment of an attack.
Let's break this down meticulously so the listener can apply this tonight if they need to. Step 1 of the protocol: identify and separate.
This requires putting the earlier concepts into practice. When the thought hits, you must immediately recognize that the intrusive idea is not your true identity.
You have to create distance between yourself and the chaos.
You observe the thought and actively say, that is not me producing that. That is an external fiery dart.
In modern psychology, this is similar to cognitive diffusion learning, to see thoughts as events rather than absolute truths. But the scriptural framework adds a whole layer of spiritual origin to it.
Right, it identifies the archer who shot the dart.
So step 2 is name the dart.
You cannot defeat an enemy that you refuse to identify. Vague, free-floating anxiety is incredibly hard to fight. You have to explicitly name the lie.
You drag it out of the shadow.
You articulate exactly what it's trying to say. For instance, you don't just say, I feel bad. You say, I am terrified I am going to lose my job.
Or I am feeling the fear that my child is going to die.
Exactly. You name the specific dart that has pierced you.
There is immense power in naming something. Even going back to the book of Genesis, naming implies authority over the thing being named. So once you name the dart, you move to step 3, raise the shield.
The moment you have articulated the lie, you immediately counter it by speaking a specific KJV verse out loud.
The out loud part seems non-negotiable in these notes. Why is the vocalization so critical? Why can't I just think the verse in my head?
It is vital on both a spiritual and neurological level. Spiritually, the notes treat the spoken word as an exercise of authority, mimicking how God spoke creation into existence.
Wow. Okay.
And neurologically, silent thought moves at lightning speed, which is why anxiety spirals so incredibly fast. When you speak out loud, you force your brain to slow down to the speed of your vocal cords.
That makes so much sense.
You engage your motor cortex to form the words, and you engage your auditory cortex to hear them. You are literally interrupting the panic loop in your brain with a new physical input.
But wait, what happens when the listener is in the middle of a full-blown panic attack? I mean, it feels physically impossible to formulate a coherent sentence, let alone recite 17th century King James English when you feel like you are suffocating and the room is spinning.
That is precisely the moment it is most necessary. The sources drive this point home with absolute rigidity. You do not wait until you feel calm.
Really?
If you wait for the feeling of peace to arrive before you speak the truth, you will be waiting in torment forever. The protocol mandates that you declare truth over feelings.
Declare truth over feelings. That is a massive paradigm shift.
In this framework, Scripture is described in Ephesians 6 as the sword of the Spirit. A sword is an offensive weapon. You speak the verse out loud to quench the dart because your feelings are lying to you in that moment.
Your body is lying to you.
Yes, your feelings are presenting a false reality. They are telling you that you are dying, that you are abandoned, that you are ruined. You have to use the sword to cut through the deception of your own nervous system.
Imagine being in a pitch-black room. You don't sit in the dark and wait to feel like the room is bright before you reach out and flip the light switch.
No, of course not.
You flip the switch because it is dark. You speak the word out loud because you are terrified.
The vocal declaration forces the reality of the text into the room with you. This active spoken defense is part of a much larger biblical mandate concerning who actually controls the real estate inside your brain.
Let's explore the mechanics of that control. The sources frame this as taking thoughts captive, which relies on 2 Corinthians 10.5 in the KJV.
The verse outlines the offensive strategy. Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ.
The language there is incredibly aggressive. Bring into captivity every thought. It doesn't say, gently observe your thoughts and let them float by like leaves on a stream.
No, not at all.
It says take them captive. The Greek root there, akmelatizo, literally means to take a prisoner of war at spear point. It is a hostage situation in your mind.
It is the absolute language of warfare. The mechanics of taking a thought captive, according to the sources, involve actively replacing the source of your thought.
Replacing the source.
You are not trying to suppress the bad thought. Suppression is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. Eventually, your arms get tired and it explodes back to the surface with twice the force.
So you aren't just trying to manage your stress levels.
No, you are swapping out your weak human willpower for divine authority.
So practically speaking, if the fiery dart is, I am going to lose my job and my family will be destitute, taking it captive means I don't just sit there squeezing my eyes shut, repeating, don't think about losing your job, don't think about losing your job.
Because the brain doesn't process negatives efficiently. If you say, don't think about losing your job, the brain only pictures losing the job.
Right. Instead, I take it captive by forcibly replacing the narrative. I speak a specific truth that overrides the fear. I am replacing the source material entirely.
And part of that specific operation involves exercising explicit spiritual authority. The sources note that taking a thought captive includes verbally renouncing the spirit of anxiety and rebuking the torment.
You are asserting spiritual dominance over the mental chaos. You are acting as the landlord of your own mind.
You draw a definitive line. You say, I do not accept this torment. I renounce the spirit of fear in the name of Christ.
Let's visualize the difference between human willpower and divine authority here. Relying on willpower is like standing in a dry riverbed, trying to hold back a raging flash flood with your bare hands.
You might hold your ground for a few seconds.
Yeah, but you are going to get exhausted, overwhelmed, and swept away eventually. Taking a thought captive using the Word of God is like a helicopter dropping a massive, impenetrable steel dam right into the middle of the river.
The dam stops the flood instantly.
Not because you are strong enough to hold the water back, but because of the unyielding, inherent nature of the steel.
The Word of God is the steel dam. But to speak with that kind of authority, to confidently drop that dam into place while the floodwaters are rising, you have to truly understand your identity. You cannot wield a weapon you don't believe you have the right to hold.
Oh, that's good. If you don't know who you are, you won't believe you have the jurisdictional authority to command the fear to leave.
The enemy's primary tactic, as we establish, is to make you feel like an orphan, to make you feel utterly abandoned, isolated, and powerless. But the biblical text offers a completely different, radically empowering identity.
And the sources anchor this identity in Romans 8.1 theme. This is arguably the most powerful transition in the deep dive. We move from the spirit of fear to the spirit of adoption.
The KJV translates it beautifully. For ye have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father.
Let's dissect the spirit of bondage for a second. Bondage implies slavery. It implies being chained to your anxiety, having zero autonomy, and waking up every day completely subject to the whims of whatever panic decides to attack you.
A slave has no rights, no property, and no defense.
That is the exact condition fear wants to keep you in. It wants to put you in chains. But the text definitively states you have not received that spirit. You are not a slave to fear. Instead, you have received the spirit of adoption.
In the historical context of the Roman Empire, when Paul was writing this, adoption was a massive, life-altering, legal undertaking. It changed your entire legal and spiritual status permanently.
Roman adoption laws were intense, weren't they?
Very intense. When a person was adopted, all of their previous debts were legally wiped out. They lost all rights in their old family and gained all the rights of a legitimate son in the new family. They became an absolute heir.
So the text declares that you are no longer a slave to fear. You are a legally recognized, fully enfranchised child of the Most High God.
You have royal blood, spiritually speaking. You have full access to the resources of your father's estate.
And one of the primary resources provided to the adopted child is the Comforter. The sources dedicate significant time to this specific role, sent by God specifically for the soul that feels drowning in worry.
The Greek word for comforter is parakletos, which translates to an intercessor, a consoler, or an advocate-like legal counsel called to your side in a trial.
So when you are in the middle of a panic attack, when the fiery darts are flying and you feel like you are losing your grip on reality, the comforter is present.
Present to remind you of your divine adoption, to advocate for you, to confirm to your spirit that you are not crazy, but rather that you are under attack and you have the legal authority to fight back.
So what are the practical implications of this for the listener? It means that your foundational self-worth is not tied to your mental health struggles. It means that stepping out of fear begins with remembering your royal adopted identity.
You do not fight fear as a helpless victim hoping to just survive the night.
You fight fear as a fully deputized heir exercising legal authority over an intruder who has literally broken into your house.
That identity shift changes the entire posture of the battle. If you know you are an adopted child of God, you know you have the absolute right to wield the sword of the Spirit.
All right, the foundation is laid. You know your identity as an adopted child. You know the name and shield protocol. Identify the dart, name the lie, and raise the KJV shield out loud. Now we need to supply the actual ammunition.
You cannot go into battle with an empty scabbard.
It is time to open the armory.
Preparation is everything. You cannot wait until the 3:00 a.m. attack starts to flipping through pages looking for a verse. You need these weapons memorized or written on index cards, locked and loaded.
Let's do a highly detailed exegesis of the specific KJV scriptures provided in these sources. We are basically going to build an audio spiritual warfare prayer guide for the listener right now.
I love that. Let's do it.
Let's start with the fiery dart of failure or weakness. When that heavy dread settles on you and tells you you are not enough, you are weak, you are going to completely fail, what is the specific weapon to draw?
The primary weapon against the dart of failure and weakness is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me.
Through Christ, which strengtheneth me. Let's look at the context of Paul actually writing that. He isn't sitting on a beach writing a self-help slogan for athletes trying to win a football game.
No, he is likely in a Roman prison. He is in chains, facing potential execution, enduring cold, hunger, and total isolation. He is in a place of profound physical and emotional weakness.
And in that dark place, he writes this verse.
The Greek word for strengtheneth is endynamo, which means to empower or to infuse with strength.
So when you use this weapon, you are actively shifting the burden. We talked earlier about how human willpower is weak. This verse actively transfers your reliance from your own failing flesh to the infinite, inexhaustible strength of Christ.
When you declare Philippians 4:13 out loud, you are acknowledging, yes, my flesh is weak right now. I feel like I am failing, but my strength is not the deciding factor in this battle.
You are neutralizing the enemy's entire argument. The enemy says you are too weak. You use the shield to say, you're right, I am weak, but the Christ within me is not.
It's the ultimate trump card.
Okay, let's move to the next major attack. What about the dart of loneliness or total abandonment? That terrifying isolation where it feels like God is a million miles away and just doesn't care.
The weapon for that specific isolation is Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and of a good courage, fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee.
The historical context here is powerful too. Moses is speaking to Joshua and the Israelites. They are staring down hostile territory full of literal giants, and Moses is about to die. They are facing massive transition and terrifying odds.
And the promise delivered to them is absolute. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And in the KJV, the use of thee and thou denotes the singular.
Oh, wow, so it's incredibly intimate.
Very. God is not just speaking to the crowd generally. He is speaking directly to the individual.
There is no ambiguity in that promise at all. It doesn't say he might not forsake you or he will try his best not to fail you. It is an ironclad covenant guarantee.
When the loud isolation of a panic attack hits, you vocalize Deuteronomy 31:6 to remind your own mind and to declare to the spiritual atmosphere that your feelings of abandonment are a straight-up lie. You are actively accompanied by the Creator.
Okay, moving to the next weapon. What about when faced with general panic? You know, that overarching, paralyzing dismay and terror about the future where you can't even pinpoint one specific fear, you just feel doomed.
For that, the sources prescribe Isaiah 41:10.
Let's read the KJV text. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness.
We really need to unpack the word dismayed there. The Hebrew root involves looking around anxiously, terrified by circumstances. It is that frantic scanning of the horizon for the next disaster.
Waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly. The command is to stop scanning the horizon for disaster because of the presence of God. For I am thy God.
There is such comforting physical imagery in that verse. God declaring, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. The right hand is historically the symbol of power, authority, and covenant execution.
It paints the picture of a father physically catching and holding up a child whose legs have given out.
When the panic literally makes your knees weak, Isaiah 41.10 is the declaration that divine authority is physically keeping you on your feet.
It is a brilliant counteroffensive to the feeling of collapsing under the weight of the world.
Let's talk about a very specific nuance of anxiety, the timing of fear. Sometimes the fear hits and we instantly feel a secondary wave of guilt or shame for even feeling afraid in the first place, thinking it means we just lack faith.
The specific weapon to dismantle that guilt is Psalm 56.3. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee.
What time I am afraid. The text inherently acknowledges that the emotion of fear is going to strike.
Yes, the author of this psalm, David, wrote this when he was captured by the Philistines in Gath. He is in enemy territory, surrounded by people who want him dead. He is holding the sword of Goliath in Goliath's hometown.
He was legitimately terrified.
Very much so. The verse acknowledges that fear is an event, a what time, not a permanent state of being. And the tactical response, I will trust in thee, is a deliberate active choice.
So trust in this framework is not a warm, fuzzy emotion you wait to feel. It is a calculated decision you make in the teeth of the fear. So practically, step 2, I name the dart. I'm feeling intensely afraid right now. Step 3, raise the shield. But Psalm 56.3 says, what time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. It completely neutralizes the shame of being attacked.
Finally, for seeking total deliverance from a prolonged siege, the sources point to Psalm 34.4. I sought the Lord, and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears.
This is a biblical anecdote of absolute success. David, again in a moment of sheer terror where he had to literally pretend to be insane just to survive the king of Gath, sought the Lord. The text says the Lord heard him and delivered him from all his fear.
Not just a few of them, not just the manageable ones, all of them.
When you declare Psalm 34.4, you are standing on legal precedent. You are citing a historical case where God delivered someone from panic, and you are declaring that the exact same deliverance is available and active for you right now.
These 5 verses are the core of your armory. But the sources are clear that just using them once in an emergency, pulling the ripcord only when you are in a free fall, is only part of the strategy.
That's the rest of it.
If you want to overcome the spirit of fear over the long haul, you have to enact a permanent change in how your mind operates.
We have arrived at the final phase of the strategy. Rewiring your chemistry through divine immersion. This is where the ancient spiritual practices intersect perfectly with modern physiological realities.
The enemy uses repetitive, intrusive what-ifs to build deep, grooved neural pathways of anxiety in your brain. If you think a terrifying thought 1,000 times, your brain gets incredibly efficient at being terrified.
It becomes your default setting.
To counter this, the framework requires that you use daily, consistent repetition of Scripture to build competing pathways of peace.
The concept of neuroplasticity tells us that the brain changes based on what we actually focus on. The sources indicate that consistently reading, praying, and vocalizing these KJV verses actually alters your mental and physical state over time.
You are replacing the spirit of bondage with the spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. You are quite literally myelinating the pathways of peace, insulating the neurological wiring that defaults to truth instead of panic.
It is exactly like physical training. You cannot just lift a heavy weight once during an adrenaline rush and expect to be permanently strong. You have to put in the daily reps.
This immersion cannot just be an emergency protocol. It must become your baseline routine.
You wake up in the morning, and before the enemy even has a chance to launch the first dart of the day, you declare your identity. You vocalize the verses.
You build up the walls of your sound mind while the sun is shining, as a fortress is secure when the storm hits at night.
Imagine the transformation. Consider what your mind would feel like if the default background noise wasn't a constant hum of catastrophic what-ifs.
What a thought.
What if the baseline frequency of your brain was the promises of the KJV text? What if, when a sudden crisis occurs at work or at home, your knee-jerk neurological reaction was no longer a spike of cortisol and panic, but the immediate spoken declaration of a scripture verse?
That is the incredible power of a rewired, sound mind. And it is not a fantasy. According to the framework we've explored, it is the explicit promise of 2 Timothy 1.7.
This has been an intensely practical journey through these sources. Let's briefly recap the transformational architecture we've built today. First, you must redefine the battlefield. Recognize that the spirit of fear is an external spiritual operation, not your core identity.
Second, you must identify the enemy's ammunition. Those intrusive what-ifs are highly targeted, fiery darts designed to isolate you.
Third, you execute the name and shield protocol. Identify the lie, name the dart explicitly, and raise the KJV shield by speaking the verse out loud to interrupt the panic loop.
Fourth, you operate from your legal identity as an adopted child of the Most High God, utilizing the Comforter.
And finally, you immerse yourself daily in the Word to literally rewire your mind.
It represents a complete operational shift from defensively managing stress to offensively walking in divine authority.
Here is the direct call to action for you, the listener. Do not just let this be an interesting deep dive you listen to. You have to apply the Word daily. Read the KJV text. Take a few minutes today and create physical flashcards of the weaponized verses we unpacked.
Philippians 4.13 for weakness, Deuteronomy 31.6 for abandonment.
Isaiah 41.11 for panic, Psalm 56.3 for the timing of fear, and Psalm 34.4 for total deliverance. Put them on your bathroom mirror. Keep them in your car. Have them sitting right on your nightstand so they are within arm's reach when the house is dark and the darts start flying.
As we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final paradigm-shifting thought to consider.
Let's hear it.
We spend so much energy running from fear. But what if the 3.0 a.m. panic attack that the enemy specifically engineered for your torment is actually the exact crucible God has chosen for you to finally discover the reality of your true spiritual authority?
What a profound way to view the battle. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the text. And remember, no matter how loud the noise in your head gets tonight, your ultimate, unchanging identity is a child of the Most High God. Stand your ground, speak the truth out loud, and we will see you on the next deep dive.